Happy Earth Day. Thank you, Korea Society, for hosting the virtual screening of Zero Waste in celebration of Earth Day. So I hope everyone had a chance to take a look at the virtual screening of Zero Waste. Here I am today as a Q&A session with Danny Kim, the director of Zero Waste. And today, we're gonna go over the questions that people may have about the documentary itself. Hi, Danny. Good to see you here. Thank you for making the time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming here today.
And how are you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm really excited that I get an opportunity to show my film to the greater East Coast folks in New York and tri-state area and across the globe. And in a special, meaningful day such as the Earth Day, and because my film is talking about plastic pollution crisis and zero waste, what better day is to watch this film and talk about it, right?
Yeah. Let's start from the beginning. How did you decide to film this actual issue and people who are dealing with the issue itself about plastic waste?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. The idea originally came about back in 2019 when the COVID-19 pandemic happened. So like many people in Korea and the rest of the world, I was trying to keep with the social distancing rules and, stop going out as much as I used to. And then I found myself ordering a lot of, delivery foods and takeout containers. And every time I do that from delivery apps such as Yogi or Coupang Eats and 배달의 민족, which is equivalent to Uber Eats in the US, I noticed a lot of those food deliveries use tons of wraps and plastics. So after 1 week of eating those type of delivery foods, I noticed in my office the garbage was piling up. So I got really curious, okay, if me as a single individual consume so much plastic, and Korea is about 50 million population, where is all this garbage going? Because we're not the US, our landmass is not that big. So I started digging more as a research and found out some interesting facts.
Oh, speaking of research, how did you find these individuals who are facing this issue and trying to make a change? Is there a well-established network?
Surprisingly, Korea, a lot of young people, like people in Europe and the Western countries, a lot of young millennials and Gen Zers are really interested in preserving the environment and pretty vocal about their issues, right? So what I did was I went to Instagram and Twitter and all these social medias and typed hashtag zero waste, both in English and Korean, and tried to look for some interesting young people who stood out to me. So, and then what I did was after narrowing down the list to 3 to 5 people, I just DM'd them personally. And a lot of times they got back to me right away and saying, yeah, we can help you out. And that's how I did my casting. I cast a wider net, and then my success rate was pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, I know that you filmed this documentary 2022. So have you connected with them recently? Has their view changed? What are the updates?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of those characters still, even to this day. And actually one of the company that I profiled in the film called It Green, Return to Service. We became super close friends. They ended up mentoring me over the years. So I noticed their change as well. In the film, we talked about, doing the test run at the Jamsil baseball stadium. But since then, they went to Suwon Stadium, and I think they're planning to go to Busan and go nationwide. And they do a lot of still initiative to curb plastics by introducing reusable containers. And I do talk to Subin from time to time, and we're actually going to do a similar screening and Q&A event with the U.S. Embassy on Wednesday, 24th in Korea, and she's going to be the panelist. So we're going to be talking about the same thing in Korea in front of the U.S. Embassy audience. Yeah.
So raising more awareness to the public, which is a good sign. I see. During filming, there is a recycling system already in Korea. Just in case people who are not aware about the plastic system in Korea, can you explain more about how it goes?
Yeah, as you can see from my film, I did kind of go over the basics. So in Korea, everybody does a phenomenal job recycling, which is they have to separate all the plastics, glasses, combustibles, paper, aluminum cans, etc. And when they do the separations, not only they do separate each different materials, what we have to do is to rinse it with water to make sure there's no other like food waste or whatever contaminants in it. So I feel like as a Korean, I'm kind of proud to see that happening, because when I was growing up in the US and when I spent a lot of my time in the US, people in the US, Americans don't do a thorough job with recycling, right? They just dump everything in one trash. At least in Korea, we do our own day-to-day part to make a difference. But sadly, when I was working on this film, I realized that not all the plastics do get recycled. It's not like 100% rate. I think the Seoul city of Seoul, they tried to up their game and push the recycling rate to like 70 to 80% in 2022. But yeah, it's still not like 100%. So I'm still kind of like worried that, going back to my earlier point, like Korea, we don't have a huge land mass. So where is all the like remainder going? Are they just dumping in the ocean, or are they going into the landfills? Like, yeah, that's still a big question.
Yeah, speaking of Seoul metropolitan government, they did promise to reduce their plastics by 50% by 2022, but we still have a lot way to go. So do you see that, what part of the issue do you think is a challenge for them?
I feel like a lot of the times it's not just the government initiative that needs to be mandated, it's the corporations too. It's their job to produce less plastics. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be the kind of person who's saying plastic is like, we have to ban plastic 100%, because that's not realistic. Even in my film, I address like, is zero waste like realistic goal, like doing it 100%? I personally, I don't think so, because to me, there are some good plastics that we need to survive. And if you're thinking about the socioeconomic gap, people on the lower end of the economic margin, like they tend to rely on more like those single-use plastics more than maybe like upper class or rich people, right? So what is there to say to like criticize that and say like, okay, we have to like ban all plastics altogether? Then what's gonna happen to all the like essential plastics that we need in day-to-day lives? I think the point I tried to make across making this film was that we need to be more conscientious about reducing unnecessary waste, which means, you know, stop the practice of overconsumption, which I kind of highlight in the film with the baseball stadium. If it's still kind of like apparent in Korea, we're like, the way I see it as like Korea is like a hyper-capitalist society, which is fine. I'm not criticizing that. It's just that people tend to just like mindlessly shop, especially with the convenience from their smartphones and like internet services. Like you can just order everything online, right? And it just comes to your home like next day or even like a few hours sometimes. So I feel like things like that, the corporation should take further by like trying to eliminate those excessive waste by, you know, we don't need like excessive plastic wrappings and gift bags for the products that we order for day-to-day.
So it seems like it's
yeah.
not, I mean, it has to, the effort needs to happen both ways, like in a company perspective and also as an individual. So I guess public awareness is the main key in order to tackle this issue together. So do you see the general public awareness been changing?
I think so, because I feel like since I've started making this film, I noticed there's been a lot of new zero waste shops popping up. Vegan restaurants are popping up everywhere in Seoul, and not just Seoul, but everywhere in Korea, including like Jeju Island. So I think people are being more conscientious about saving the planet, because, you know, we're constantly bombarded with the news about, you know, climate change. You know, there's all these like pollutions happening. Not just, it's no longer a foreign news anymore, because when I was making this film, I was shocked on a personal level. Oh my God, this is actually happening in our own backyard and our own ocean, which was kind of sad. I thought those plastic garbage in the ocean was like a foreign problem, not Korean problem, right?
But it was happening actually at Jeju Island, which
so,
Subin actually showed us during the documentary.
So that was kind of sad, but also I was kind of happy that people like Subin is taking an initiative to, curb the crisis and do their own part, and hopefully will inspire like other like-minded people to, take small step at a time. I think my message with this film was to, of course, me as an individual can change the entire system, but if we do our own part, day to day, it should make a small difference, because think about it, if one or two people gather around and voice their like opinion, and then it kind of grows bigger and bigger, and let's say like hundreds and thousands of people, then the corporations has to listen. It's no longer just like a personal problem, it's becoming like a mass problem. Then once the corporations move, then the government is also going to like take.
It's like how the plastic attack protest happened.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm kind of happy to see that kind of movement happening in Korea. And hopefully when I was showing this film in like the US and Italy last year, I got a chance to interact with a lot of like audience outside of Korea, and kind of was also learning process for me, because I was really curious to hear their perspective after watching the film. So it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
I tried to be the messenger,
Yes.
Yeah.
So the message is actually creating a ripple effect for corporations to listen about the plastic pollution issue. So which company, not which company, but which industry do you think has a long way to go in terms of plastic waste issues?
Oh, that's a difficult question.
It is.
But I feel like over the years since I've been working on this project, I gotta say that the big culprit for the plastic pollution issue with the industry should be targeted towards the big oil companies, because ever since the rise of like popularity of hybrid cars and EV cars, I feel like a lot of the demand for oil has been dropping. So for the big oil companies to compensate their loss, I read in like New York Times or somewhere in the news that they've been intentionally cranking out more single-use plastics, because that's how they make up that gap. So unless they find a better solution to stop doing that, I feel like all these individuals doing our bit is not going to make a huge difference. That's not to say don't do it. I'm just saying, in order to have like a happy ending, everybody has to do their own part. Like me as an individual citizen has to do my part. Corporations has to do their own part. Government has to do their own part. So it needs to be like a nice big, what do you call it? Like a big wheel that rotates.
Yeah, like together and making a gigantic snowball in order to solve this issue. So speaking of efforts, then what kind of effort do you think is the most effective? Like there were a lot of efforts that company has put onto, individuals has put onto, but which do you think, since you've been digging deep on this issue, which effort do you think has contributed the most on reducing this issue?
Personally, I feel like corporations can push more or encourage the consumers to use reusable, containers, reusable cups, reusable spoon and forks. That way, as a whole, we're not producing excess amount of like single-use plastics. If we are okay with like the idea of like recycling, reusing the same plastics that are already out there, then there will be less demand to produce like newly like made like tumblers or like cutleries and cups, plastic cups, paper like plates and things like that. So I feel like as soon as the corporations do their part and voicing to the consumers, hey, you don't have to buy new every time. Try reusable containers, reusable tumblers. Then maybe it will be a little bit better. I don't know.
Like you said, creating ripple effects. So I mean, let's move on to the question as a filmmaker now. So what was the biggest challenge you had as a filmmaker who's covering this issue?
Well, because I made this film during the pandemic, I had to face and overcome a lot of obstacles, including I ended up getting COVID towards the end of the production, like during post-production, which was terrifying because at that time everybody was saying, oh, COVID, don't worry, it's just like a common cold, you'll be fine. But for me personally, I never felt sick in my life like that, in my entire life. So I was going through I was kind of like dying. I'm laughing right now, but at the time I thought I was so serious because I lost my taste bud, sense of smell, touch, everything. So it was kind of crazy. And that was during towards the end of post-production, but I had to still spearhead it and overcome the disease and hey, I managed to finish the film in March of 2020, March of 2023, and then started submitting to a bunch of festivals and they started responding. So in the end, it worked out. But yeah, that was one of my biggest obstacles. And also during production, because we shot it during the height of social distancing measurement and everything, so I had to wear a mask, which is uncomfortable when you're in production. I had to keep my social distancing with my subjects. So even though
So as a filmmaker, you also had to meet up with the interviewers and also meet up with individuals and also actually film them. So social distancing was a challenge for you.
Yeah, because if you think about it, for most compelling documentaries, you tend to be really fly on the wall, be very observant with your characters, and I wanted to really spend more time with my characters, follow them around day to day. But because of COVID, I was kind of shy away from it because I don't want to get sick and I don't want to get them sick either. So it was an interesting challenge, but we kind of figured out, we kind of made it work. And as you can see, the final result, it came out all right, I think.
I mean, while you were covering this issue itself, since it's a documentary, sometimes you have to allow some extent to be shown and not shown. As you can see, in the Champion Stadium part, you may see a lot of plastic waste, but you've only decided to show a certain extent and just not show it. So how did you manage on drawing that line?
Wait, about showing and not showing the waste, you mean?
Yeah. So since as a documentary, you need to show what's going on right now, but at the same time, you don't want people to be disgusted on the reality of what's going on.
Funny you asked that question because one of my key staff members was always, and who was a bit huge mentor for my project, and he was constantly telling me, Danny, you have to show more grotesque garbage mountain. Look at all those documentaries out there about plastic waste. You need to
But you've actually shown the mountain of the plastic waste.
But in his view, he was keep pushing me to almost terrorize the audience so they can actually do something about it.
Call action.
Yeah, because otherwise they're gonna just look at my film and be like, oh, it's not a big problem, right? But so I kind of understood what his point was. So that's why I ended up going to that.
But you don't want to scare your audience away at the same time.
No, but I wanted to still address the issue. So that's how I found that huge recycling center in Songpa district in Seoul. And we had the access to go in there for a little bit. So I started filming in it. And I noticed a lot of different mountains of garbage. It's not as terrorizing as other parts of the world like Southeast Asia or Africa. But for me as a Korean person to get close to that type of facility, I thought was, whoa, this is alarming because I thought this was a foreign problem, not a Korean problem. So that kind of raised my, eyebrows and be like, okay, I need to do better. Yeah.
So you wanted to raise the awareness, but not to a point that would scare people away. And as a filmmaker, you try to manage that scale, I guess.
And as you can see from the film, my message was for the audience to watch my film and feel something okay, we need to do better, right? So that doesn't mean, it doesn't require a lot of effort per se. So as long as you do your own day-to-day part, eventually it's going to have like a ripple effect. And like I mentioned earlier, like corporations will start listening to you, and then the government will enact new policy. That's how the world changes to a better state, you know?
I mean, speaking of filming, so throughout while you were addressing the issue in your documentary, your tone is somewhat optimistic rather than pessimistic. So what led you to that thinking? So what made you become more optimistic about what lies in front of us?
Well, I think that's the easy answer because you know me, Karina. I'm a very optimistic person. Despite all the struggles I had, I tend to look on the bright side. Because if you think about it, if you're pessimistic, there's nothing you can do. And even Subin, our lead protagonist, she talks about that too. There's no point of being pessimistic. If you are, then what else you can do except for dying? And I totally agree with her on that statement as well. And I tried to, you know, shed a light on the issue, and hopefully by profiling all these like unique change makers, they're all like young, like millennials and Gen Zers. It will kind of inspire other young people to take action. And that was the whole point of my film. Like, hey guys, there's this problem, but there are this set of people who are just not too different from us, but they're doing their interesting, like unique part to change this. So why don't we work together to lead that change? You know, for a better future, and we need to inherit this beautiful planet to our next generation,
so that we could see more cherry blossoms for our future generations as well. Yeah. So, I mean, how has your viewpoint changed while you're working on this film in regards to environmentalism?
You know, it's a funny question because prior to working on zero waste, I wasn't, you know, an activist or anything like that. But like I was mentioning before, I noticed a lot of plastics being used on a day-to-day life at my office. So I tried to be mindful and partake on the movement, right? So I started using, you know, bamboo toothbrush and tried using the solid toothpaste when Subin was introducing it to us when we were shooting down in Jeju. So something like that, I took notice, and it's a small act, but I feel like it's not that difficult for me to do it personally. So I noticed that I tried to shift away from, you know, using a lot of those single-use plastics and, you know, replace it to other items that is more eco-friendly.
So you started to make some small changes in your daily lives in order to create a bigger effect.
Yep.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
So then, what is your next project? Give us a sneak peek.
So next project I'm really excited is that I've been working with this subject down in the city called Hapcheon near Daegu. It's south of South Korea, and they are the second and third generation hibakusha, which means like Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombing survivors. And apparently there's a large number of Korean diaspora who are affected by the bombings as well. And since the bombings, they moved back to Korea and they kind of resettled down in this small, you know, countryside city called Hapcheon. So I've been following this main protagonist and planning to follow her for the course of like next few months and put together a feature-length documentary, and it's called August Again. I'm excited to announce that to you guys that I'm going to start a Kickstarter campaign in the US around like mid-May. So hopefully with that money, I can, you know, spearhead the production and generate more buzz in Korea, and also travel back and forth to Japan and Korea to document the journey.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, if everyone wants to hear more updates about the project, please follow DocuPlus.
Please do.
Please do. I mean, this project itself sounds exciting. And thank you for joining us for today's Q&A session. I hope you all had a great time. And thank you, Danny, for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karina.
Thank you.